That hinders exercising your independent thinking muscle. You don't have to make any decisions. And then suddenly you're just let out into the world.
No one should be given as much power as to be put on a pedestal. You hold that power yourself.
I will start seeing that character has so many options going forth. You can craft what is going to come next.
If you have the courage to deal with the consequences of your choices, let nobody else dictate, but take full responsibility and accountability. Welcome to another episode of the IC India podcast. In our last episode, we spoke of how best to manage your life through making self-aware choices, identifying your inner strengths, cultivating a few others to become adequately skilled on something monetizable, so that after a point you can enjoy a career of, I love this term, effortless effort or unconscious competence, which means you don't even know how good you are, but you are. And then life just becomes play, which is another thing we've been bringing up recurringly in the past episodes. And I think we'll continue to, because it's such an important fundamental outlook to have of looking at and navigating life as a game. A few rogue elements, obstacles, or minor setbacks should not take away from the joy of playing this game. And something tells me this is a pep talk we could give to the Indian cricket team right about now, fresh from their unfortunate defeat in the recent Cricket World Cup. After a string of straight victories throughout the tournament, I think that's what's getting to people.
I would say rather they could give us a pep talk, because they are back to playing and they are back on their feet and life is back to normal. So it seems, of course, there would be like terrible disappointment given how much effort goes into what we just see the tip of the iceberg. So I'm pretty sure that they have overcome that disappointment and are back to looking at the future rather than the past. So I think that's a prime example for how play and having a sporting spirit helps in you in life to get through disappointments and setbacks.
It was heartbreaking, of course, to see their reactions immediately after. A couple of the players had tears in their eyes. And of course, it does hurt a lot. And to all of those watching, it hurt us as well. But like you said, yeah, they're back to playing. And the important thing is to chin up and go on. It's actually fitting that we brought up cricket, because I wanted to talk about pop culture and its effects on impressionable minds. And cricket, as we all know, makes up a humongous part of our pop culture in this country. Thankfully, we have some very good role models in cricket, and they are where they are because of their unquestionable skill at the game. They're all fitness icons, pretty much, hardworking. The glitz, the glamour, all of it are incidental, and if anything, a byproduct of their excellence in the game. And we talked about, even in the last episode, of how we need to be eclectic in our approach when we seek to emulate anything of the influencers we follow. We spoke of influencers specifically then. Take only the good bits from them, but no one should be given as much power as to be put on a pedestal. You grow your sense of ethics and moral compass and rely on that to sail you through. But all of that we'll get to in a bit. Back to pop culture. Do you have any instances, Megha, that you can recall of how pop culture in your earlier years shaped your thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking about it that back in our days, I think it was Bollywood was the biggest influencer, or movies in general. And I don't think they had as much of a direct influence, in that they were not trying to influence. It was a subconscious influence, like they were setting the fashion trends, or like fast, like friendship bands, or normalizing how wooing a woman by stalking is the way to go, or teaching women how the right way to be a woman is, glorifying self-sacrifice and all those kind of things. But I don't think they were very consciously trying to influence, while like today, everyone is just vying to get that place in your head, which is very different from how we grew up. What about you?
I mean, I was going to say, I think here's where the importance of curating what sort of things you get exposed to as a child, it's that the importance of that comes in. So I was dissuaded, forbidden even on a large number of occasions from watching Bollywood cinema or frivolous cinema anyway. I mean, we did watch a few like Baby's Day Out or Home Alone, that kind of stuff that the whole family can sit together for. But otherwise, we were mostly asked to read and, expand our imagination. Like, so Tintin, Famous Five, and, Enid Blyton, and Tintin specifically. I was so drawn to him as a child, and he makes a very integral part of my growing up years. I think the fact that I could just take off and go on adventures later in life, unplanned for, extended periods of time, that may have sowed the seeds for that earlier on in my head. And it's unfortunate that I get to appreciate, all of this now, in retrospect. So while going through it when all my friends were allowed to, or they were watching, the stuff they were watching and I couldn't, because my parents didn't allow me to, I may have picked up fights with them then and protested against it. But good parenting is invisible, unfortunately. You cannot fully appreciate in the moment of how vital a role it plays. Only in retrospect when you connect the dots, can you?
Yes, so true. Like cable was not there at our house as well. So it was usually, I couldn't participate in those discussions in school, which involved all the stuff that people were watching on cable TV. So yeah, growing up, lots of books. But I don't think I have any regrets about that as well, because books shaped my influenced. Like, yeah, they were the influences in my life back then, I think.
Absolutely. Wouldn't have it any other way myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember those stories. Even like it's hard to remember what I read a few days back, maybe, but it's those like formative years. Whatever you're exposed to, they affect you throughout your life. So that's important to choose what you pick at that time.
Yeah, long-term, deep-seated, deep-rooted memories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just makes you think how harder it must be for parents today, because there's little you can shield from your child. I mean, how much can you go on, like the age restriction, kids are smart enough to get past that and open an account through, just giving a false date of birth or whatever. So it's just so much harder now. And, social media is, plenty has been said about it as to how it is reprogramming or bringing in sort of the wrong sort of programming in children, from a very young age. So thankfully we sort of saw a little bit of it coming in, maybe towards high school, but not as bad. I think if we had High Five or Orkut, Facebook had only just begun to pick up right after my 12th grade. So yeah, thankfully I escaped the worst of it.
Yeah, same here. I don't think Facebook was invitation only. It was that new thing which came up when we were in undergrad. So, but yeah, like today, it's not just age restricted content which they are accessing through other means, but so many people just claiming to know it all and share their vision of what is right, and you don't know, like subconsciously, it's affecting you. Like not just kids, I think even adults, when we see those colorful lives painted in social media, which is almost fake, it makes you wonder, like, I'm missing out on things. Something is wrong in my life. And you can only imagine how it would affect students or kids that age when they see someone having a holiday, like whatever, international holiday, or having things that they don't have, or having a life that they cannot connect with. So that almost starts alienating them and makes them wonder something is wrong with them.
That, of course, is a whole other discussion altogether as to how it's sort of luxury and lifestyle, and it's just brought in the wrong sort of narrative to travel, which was always meant to be about experience seeking and experience chasing, for you to be able to grow and immerse yourself in cultures. Now it's just if you get to pose against the beach or sipping mimosas or drinks by the pool, that is apparently travel, which, I don't know, they say don't judge, but I find it hard not to. But yeah, I mean, social media, one has to be so careful with interpreting, what we see. From my experience and from the people I've seen, people with the most, colorful feed on their social media pages, Instagram, are often overcompensating for actually a not very happy life, if not a completely miserable life.
It's just the pretense, which actually I find hard to believe. Like, why do you have to pretend to have a life which you don't? What do you think motivates people to have a fake show of their lives?
I used to say this a lot. One of my pet peeves was this hashtag people would use whenever they were looking at something nice. Of course, the first instinct is to capture it and share it on their stories with the hashtag, my view is better than yours.
Oh my God, sorry. Hilarious. Why? How do you know what I thought?
Exactly. You're looking out at the skyline of New York City, and at the time I may have been up in the mountains looking at snow-capped peaks, and how are you so confident that your view is better than mine? And I thought that hashtag sort of encapsulates everything wrong with the social media culture today. That need to project a life that is in your head better than everybody else's, or the need to seek out, to demand a life that is better than everybody else's. Why should anyone else be a part of that equation to begin with?
Exactly. Like, who are they? Why should they influence anything I do in my life? The joys and the pain is all mine. It's not affecting you. It's not affecting anything that's going on in your life. And yet I should be conscious of everything I do in my life based on your opinion. Like, why? It's my life. The pain is mine. I get to choose how I get rid of it. Or it's the joy that I'm experiencing. So why should anything I take, any decision of my life be affected by your opinions?
And it becomes downright dangerous when you think about how that extreme FOMO leads them to make such wrong choices, such wrong decisions, all because they're not secure and confident in their own skin. They've had an upbringing and they carry their own culture, and that makes them unique, different from everybody else. And sooner or later, that you're going to find a way to make that your identity, your strength. I understand it's hard for kids, because they always have this need to fit in, being, sticking out like a sore thumb or being seen as different is not a good thing. But how I wish I could just tell them all, just please do not worry about it.
I know. Yesterday I read about this 16-year-old influencer from Madhya Pradesh. They had posted a reel on Instagram in a sari, and the online bullying that a person who used to or identified as a boy posed with a sari, and the amount of bullying that they went through after that they succumbed to the pressures to it. And it's been playing in my mind like again and again that why is there so much hatred to begin with? It's their life. If they're happy with something, how is it affecting you? Like, who are you to even judge someone? Yeah, I can't make sense of these things.
That FOMO just needs them to watch all the wrong kind of stuff, get exposed to the wrong kind of stuff, even if the parents didn't intend for them to. Well-meaning parents who really want children to be exposed to the right kind of stuff at the right time. It's a bit rich of me or of us to say, listen to your parents. I don't know how much of it we did that, but that's why we are sharing our experience, right? And that just trust in your parents for a bit till you're old enough to make your own decisions.
I mean, that's a double-edged sword, I think, because one way, the number of opportunities you have growing up are limited when you can take your own decisions. So that hinders your exercising your independent thinking muscle. And then and everything is just set out for you in school. You don't have to make any decisions back then. And then suddenly you're just let out into the world. Like, you're prepared to deal with it. You take your own decisions now. And that drastic change, I think a lot of people are not able to adapt to because they're not used to that. And that's when they just want to fit in. because that's comfortable and less scary, of course. Because if you take a decision which sets you aside from everyone else, you're just going to be alone for a while, and that's scary.
Yeah, unfortunately, that sense of becoming secure in our own skin and owning our identity, for a lot of people it eludes them for their entire life. A lot of people just keep on chasing that moving target of that's the thing to emulate, that's the thing I want to be like, and they never get past it. But those who are lucky enough to just claim their identity as their own and just finally shake off that need to emulate anybody else, they're the happiest. Eventually, it will enable you to create a brand or an identity, because we're heading towards everything being on the web and the webverse. We have to talk about online personal branding. So that is what will create your brand, your uniqueness, your identity that is nobody else's but yours. I think the time is now to tell children that. Hold on to what you have, which is uniquely yours. You're just killing off the differentiators that you had, that set you apart from everybody else.
In any sphere of life, if you want to stay away from internet for the rest of your life, even then having a unique identity is going to help you do whatever you want to do. So
another thing, I think it's important to take for them to learn to take accountability for their life or for the decisions that they take in their lives. I think it was Smriti Irani who said in an interview, once she came of age and she started taking some decisions, becoming active in student politics and stuff like that, when her parents didn't really approve of it. She said she owned her decisions completely and she was ready to face the consequences of it herself. If you have the courage to deal with the consequences of your choices and actions, let nobody else dictate to you or nobody else stop you. Just go ahead, do what you feel like. But take full responsibility and accountability for it. Do not then, if it does not go your way, nobody else is to blame there. But then by then you would hopefully have figured out, enough strength or resilience to quickly look for a plan B and get out of that situation anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that helps getting out of the whole victim mindset, or even because throughout as a child, everything is done for you. And then maybe you have the misconception that if something goes wrong, that has happened to you, and rather you don't have any control over it. So rather than feeling that you're a victim in that situation, you don't have any way of getting out of it. If you can, taking ownership of what's going on in your life will allow you to feel in control, and then hence try to steer it in a direction where you want to go.
Yeah, that victim mindset will not help. And the sooner you become self-reliant, make yourself the doer, see yourself as responsible for your actions, the quicker you're going to be able to accomplish things on your own.
Saying this totally out of experience, where when something went wrong in life as a teenager, and I couldn't quickly accept that why have things happened to me. It's something has happened to me and I can't do anything about it. So it set that tone in my head always when things went wrong. I didn't realize that that's how I'm dealing with the situation, by assigning some other power responsible for what's going on in my life. And it's much later when a few close friends made me realize, you're doing this. It's not the things that I'm doing it to you anymore. That's when I started realizing, okay, I am doing this. I should take ownership of what my life is today instead of thinking what happened 10 years ago. Yeah, it's hard to break off from that mindset, but being aware, that is why it's more important.
Yeah, I was also going to say we understand it takes time, both cultivating that sense of individual agency or autonomy, that you yourself are responsible for your actions and you hold that power yourself. And B, for if things were to not work or go your way, to be able to just go ahead and figure out a plan B for yourself. So that sense of dejection or failure when you first experience it can be hard to take. Or as we said previously, looking at life as an experiment, which sometimes will not turn out your way. So you'll start, concocting or firing things up for the next experiment.
Also, if you don't want to look at life as a experiment or a game, if you think of it as a story, then you can script your own story. And that's as a person who reads so much, that lights me up. the ability to be the writer of my own story and just think of myself as a character that I'm writing. So in that sense, if I view it as a third person, I will start seeing that, oh, that character has so many options going forth. And let's see where the story can be taken. And then it becomes a game in that sense, where you're writing the story where you can craft what is going to come next out of the multitude of options that can happen to the main character of the story.
That's a brilliant analogy, actually, because as with any story, when you first start writing it out, often most stories don't make sense till the very end. Even while you're writing it, if people were to read through like your first draft, the first few pages, halfway through your book, they'd stare at you like, yeah, what crap. So yes, doing your own thing can be alienating. It's important to remember that. And it's important for anyone to be aware of it starting out. You will not have too many who will understand what you're doing exactly, starting off. But consistency is key. You just keep at it every single day. Anything will yield if you're consistent with it, with watering every day. And just if your sense of direction, if your internal compass is telling you it's the right thing to do, my efforts are not going waste. I am working on growing something. You can pretty much be rest assured it will. And the more contrarian it is, the longer it will take to yield. But that's where the merit lies, in your sticking it out and seeing it through.
Yeah, all of this reminds me of this podcast that I listened to, How I Built This by Guy Raz. He talks about the stories of entrepreneurs. And I think over the years, maybe hundreds of entrepreneurs have been interviewed. And not a single one has a story which doesn't resonate with this. The conviction to stick to their ideas. And when they're alone, like nobody is with them, but they have stuck with their plans. And slowly what happens is when you stick with your convictions and work so hard, people will join you. And those people will be the more like-minded people. This is like based on so many stories that have, like every entrepreneurial story almost will be similar in that respect, that people will join you once they see your strength and your conviction taking shape.
I'll call myself out on this, in fact, because there are certain content creators who you saw, starting off 9-10 years ago, and you're like, what crap are they putting out? It was absolute cringe. To be fair, the content was, not that great, but they kept at it. They kept putting out stuff. They got better at their storytelling and their editing, at figuring out what hooks audience and how to structure it. And now they've grown and, they are pretty much out of reach for anybody like me. I can only look up in awe at the ones I sneered at. So I'm no exception here. I have been one of the few to diss someone's, efforts, someone who's trying. And I feel bad about it when I think of it. But that's, if I can convert and now be in admiration of someone I did not think too great of. There's so many like me that you can just turn over with time.
I think to some extent, we are hardwired to ignore those one-off events unless we see something happening again and again. My research involves looking at brain rhythms. And sometimes when I don't look at them from a very scientific view and just look at them philosophically. So these are like repetitions in the signal. So repeated waves, cycles of troughs and peaks, just like heartbeat and inhalation and exhalation, the cycle goes on and on. And that's how the brain communicates. And that's how the universe is communicating. And our fundamental law of nature, in a sense, repetitions, you can't imagine day and night not following each other, and or inhalation not being followed by exhalation. And that repetition is almost life in general. And unless that happens again and again, that's hard to believe in or take note of. That sustains life. You cannot sustain life without the troughs and peaks. There will be bad days and good days, and day and night, and summer and winter. But that's how life sustains itself, by the oscillations.
I wanted to draw in on your neuroscience expertise a bit. So we are, as humans, hardwired to to thrive off a sense of community, right? We seek, connections. So, and as we already discussed, doing your own thing can be alienating. How do you think one can find their strength or find their courage in the absence of that lack of connection? Because that community that they seek will be built over time if they're consistent with what they are doing. And it is only with time that it'll lead, and it most certainly will, be rest assured about that. But while they're doing it, what do they do? Are they alone enough, or do they need a small network or, a chosen few?
I mean, I think the research suggests that social settings and communication is extremely important for the well-being of the human existence in general. I think COVID and the lockdowns have proven how bad, detrimental they can be to development and health in general. So I think it would be prudent to have at least a small group of people you can trust and who have your back. And that's, I think, more than enough to sustain for a while. You don't need a large group of people by your side all the time and be that popular kid. Sometimes just having one friend can get you through so much.
Yeah, I'm sure one friend all of us can find. I mean, if one doesn't have that, then maybe you need to introspect and see if there's anything you need to change in yourself. But yeah, those one or two, or that small group of friends, that believes in you, does not deride your efforts, that you can count on for comfort, fall back on anytime.
I was in Ann Arbor during the lockdown part of life, and I just had a squirrel for a while to be my friend. And when I told people, they would get like depressed imagining my situation, but I wasn't. It was truly like I could feel connected to nature around me, and there was this strong feeling of connection where I felt one. And like that squirrel was genuinely my friend, and those trees and everything. It's just so like being connected to nature also is helpful, I think, when you don't have people around you, if you're ever in a situation like that. And trust me, it's not depressing.
I know it's not. And if anything, spiritual masters, like the greatest of them, have said that that's the highest level of spiritual mastery, where you feel one and connected with the universe. So if you've experienced like bits of it, glimpses of it already.
I think that's a survival tactic as well. I mean, you have to survive. If there's no one around you.
That was the universe's idea. In the garb of survival, it got you to elevate. Yeah. And anyway, but going back to it, so I know for a fact I have not cared too much about being liked or being popular, but I always had that small, tiny group of friends, and they remain my friends to this day, because I was non-confrontational and I have been tall, all my life. So bullies would find it easier to pick on me, because I was, in terms of visible size at least, looked like competition, but wasn't really, because it wasn't in me to retaliate or fight back. Now I'm training in MMA, so I might just be able to. But back then I wasn't, and I did the best thing that I could have done, which was not give them too much power. They'd sneer at me, a couple of them just pushed me on the ground. I just, shook off the dust off me and then just got off and walked away. Did not engage with them for a second. So you will come across, naysayers you'll always have, but you'll also have bullies through school, even continuing up to your college and work life. Have you had any?
Yeah, I was going to ask you before I move on to my story, did the bullies not affect you in any way? Like I can imagine being like threatened physically or whatever, that would affect your well-being or...
Not, it didn't inflict trauma for sure. I know, trauma is a much loosely thrown around word nowadays. I'm talking about real trauma. No, I don't think it inflicted anything of the sort on me. Something that my parents told me, they said it in the movie My Name is Kantu, which is a simplistic message, but it works in that, there are people who do good and there are people who do bad. You stay away from the bad and you'll always attract the good and be with the good. A bit too simplistic perhaps, but on a basic level it works. So I did not think of them as worthy of engaging with, further. not that I was putting too much thought into it, but it just didn't strike me to just engage with them in any manner whatsoever, verbal or physical. I didn't get into extended spats or, I just avoided them for the most part. And I think that's the best thing I could have done, because they thrive off your response. So if you don't give them any, it'll lose steam.
Totally agree with that. I think
Yeah.
when you don't allow them to have that pleasure of you suffering because of their words or their activities, then it gets boring for them and they move on. Because it's different for, I think, between boys and girls in that sense. Like growing up, it was more body shaming for us back in school and even in undergrad, I think. So like the way I took it was, if you're telling me that I need to, my weight is a concern to you, are you seeing it as a friend who is concerned about my health? Then I'm going to think about it. If you're saying from the perspective that it's not visually appealing to you according to your standards of beauty, then I absolutely do not care about it. So I think that always a binary decision, that why are they seeing this? Does it matter to me who they are? And does it matter to you what's going on in my life? Just a mental checklist of those questions. And when I found the answers that it doesn't, then I would just ignore them. Like again, ignoring is the best way to go about it. But I do remember them, because I would definitely like to ask them sometime later in life, are you still full of that hatred towards other people? Because at least wherever I experienced that, was in a situation where the person could not say anything else to express their frustration for whatever reason. And the only retort they had was like, okay, body shaming, let's do that.
True. Even in my case, if I were to really, understand the pathos, the reason behind, why they were what they were, it's because, so these characters they'd have failed a grade. They ought to have been a grade higher, but they came to be in yours. And these are often boys who were obviously not academically inclined. So they were actively involved in sports, because there was a lot of unchecked aggression which had to be channeled somewhere. Because they're battling all those insecurities within is why they feel the need to throw their weight around, show the kids around who's boss. It can be dangerous, because when you're growing up, they're chronologically a full year older, right? So much more well-built than you are in most cases. So you do not want to go up against them. In an ideal world, it would come naturally to us to be kind to, one another. And then you realize with time that not all people are wired the same way.
I mean, everyone has their own insecurities and own problems. So like being kind to each other would make the world a better place. And of all things, you would have expected that after going through a pandemic, we would be kinder to each other. But the world is like worse than it was pre-pandemic. So
yeah, I mean, the conversations have begun, and there is a sense of empathy but you don't want that to go into the zone of overcorrection, in that we now start thinking so much of how it might affect someone that you forget to be yourself and say things as you meant to say them, because then that just turns everybody weak, makes everyone a snowflake. So, just the right amount of empathy. As with everything, balance is key. And of course, to nip it in the bud for you to not have any of these insecurities seek out that support system, that close group of friends, or try to build a rich inner world, inside of yourself through, I would say, books, because that's the surest way of building a rich inner world. But whatever, I mean, just value adding, uplifting, anything that adds to you, enriches you, seek out that which helps you build that rich inner world. It's stating the obvious, but being kind, being non-confrontational doesn't mean you're weak.
And like by reading or seeking out the right sources of information or media that you're exposed to gives you that power of how you're letting the world shape your own ideas and thoughts and who you are. So I think that being aware of how everything you're exposed to is affecting you gives you the power to change your life. And that's probably very necessary in more so now than it was earlier because of what we talked earlier about how much everyone is exposed to influencers and social media and most media in general. You cannot escape it anymore. So it would just be prudent to be aware of what you're reading, what you're seeing, and processing it in your head before you absorb anything from that.
Yeah, I think that's where the true test or skill of parents, today lies, in that they cannot filter or, vet, keep out things anymore. So they really, really need to build that sense of discernment in children early on to be able to tell the right from wrong, what is worth keeping and what you ought to reject. So that sense needs to be built in from a very early age.
But I think the onus can be on the individual also.
Sure. I mean, after a point.
Because we're assuming that parents, like everyone wants to be a good parent, but there might be genuinely bad people. They might be a bad influence on their kids, even without them realizing that. If the unkind people, if the kids pick up on that, and so you don't know how you're influencing your kids also in a way. So,
of course, once the child does have that sense of, self-awareness come in, then there is no excuse, not even your parents. You have that sense of right and wrong built in. Now you know what of your parents to keep, the good bits from them. And so then your parents are no different from any other influencer you would seek to emulate things from. So it is only in your earlier formative stages that when you have little control over yourself and what your conditioning is or your wiring is, that will, be built over time. And, with the rate at which you're consuming things and interacting with people around you, that inherent sense that light bulb will come on. And then after that, you are the best judge of what to keep and what to reject.
And if it doesn't come up, then make a conscious choice to light it up and realize that, okay, I'm going to be stepping out in the real world very soon. And it's the teenage years are the transition where you're going to be taking your decisions on your own very soon. So realizing that
life and universe has its lessons of telling you where you're going wrong. So you do well to pick up on those lessons and, for you to not keep stumbling and hitting on the same roadblock.
Yeah, because most of the remarkable people I've met in life are those who say that they have consciously developed their skills and ideas which build their personality. So they have taken a control over how they build their personality through high school and undergrad, which is an inspiring thing to do. And not that I did it, but if going back I could have, then I would have taken more control over how I was shaping my personality for the future, rather than letting everything influence you and you end up being who you are, controlling who you are, I think.
Picking up a sport or early on would really help build that sense of interpersonal dynamics between a large group of people. I think it teaches a lot. So play, bringing in play into your life in various forms and various settings is something we've been talking about, how important it is. And I think here too, this too is no exception. It's something you mentioned in the first episode, that animals learn survival tactics through making their daily survival a game. Fights amongst siblings and just tackling, their own kind. So that'll hopefully go a long way in building that sense of survival skills, the human equivalent of survival skills.
And that brings us back to the sportsman spirit that we were talking about in Team India. They've lost, but they'll move on to win better, bigger matches in the future.
They do well to start the game plan for 2027 already. So, So today's discussion has actually been about, owning your own identity. Earlier we were talking about how you could become more self-aware and make informed choices and make a career out of it. But I think a prerequisite to all of that is knowing yourself for who you are and owning that identity. If there's no void in there, If you're aware of who you are, then intrusive, destructive thoughts will not creep into your mind.
And I think that's how we can tie our 3 episodes. That it's important to define your life for yourself so that you know that every decision you take aligns with your definition of life, not what someone else has defined. And then picking up all the skills and pocketing all the tools that you need to build that life that you have thought of. And then choosing your influences and being aware of how it's changing you.
Yeah, influences and influencers both.
Yeah, right.
And bringing in play in various settings. Formal education needs to be supplemented with so many other things and that go on to build your overall personality. So the new education policy, it is being implemented as we speak, and I've yet to go all through it. But one thing that I'm very happy about is that they have integrated play into the curriculum itself. So pre-primary education, there's 12 plus 3. So 3 years before your, grade 1 begins are under the ambit of the education policy. So the fact that they're factored in and built in play is, to my mind, a very welcome step in the right direction.
And the play factor is just preschool or for even like middle school? Or
for it to be formally included as part of the education policy, it's just pre-primary school. But if it's built in, if it becomes a core identity of you, it'll likely continue till you're much older. Yeah, the government is on your side because, everyone is trying to make your life better. So just trust in the universe that it is, if you have your intentions right and you want to set out to good things, then all the power surrounding you will aid you. No one is against you, and know that you will do good if you put in sincere efforts and stay consistent with it.
Totally agree with that. So we can end here for today.
Yeah. See you in the next one.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.